And we're live. Hi, this is Shira Goldberg, the host of The Addiction Show. I have with me someone who was I found him through my Google alert, and I have to say I don't look at most of them because I'm just so inundated with information on the internet, but he was really interesting, so I started clicking, and the more information I got about him, I just knew I had to get him on the show. You just saw the clip, and you can understand why. His name is Tim Ryan. He's with us from Naperville, Illinois. Welcome, Tim. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I'm truly honored to be a guest on your show.
Well, I'm really encouraged to see the extent of your work, so I definitely want to talk about that. But yeah, just recap what's been going on since that segment aired about you and your story and your son.
You know, to backpedal a little on this story, you know, I won't go into a drunkalogue, but, you know, drugs, alcohol destroyed my life. I struggled for 28 years. The last 12 was in very hard heroin addiction, and it ultimately took me to prison. I overdosed while driving, hit a few cars. Thank God I didn't kill anyone, but I did put 4 people in the hospital and was given a 7-year prison sentence. By the grace of God, when I went to prison, I was in a drug treatment program, Sheridan Correctional Center in Sheridan, Illinois. That's where I put up my hands and said, all right, God, I'll finally live your will, not mine. Dug into the 12-step program, finally got honest. While I was in prison, Shannon, my former wife, divorced me, lost our house in foreclosure, displaced my 4 kids. I walked out, really got plugged into the heroin epidemic, and unfortunately, August 1st, my 20-year-old son died from a heroin overdose a little over 8 months ago. And as I share with people, when Shannon and I got to the hospital and the chaplain walked out, I knew the cards were up, and my first thought was I'm going to be at the 6 o'clock 12-step meeting that night, and that's what I did. I truly live a life of recovery. With Nick's passing, Shannon said it the best. She said, Tim, for once I'm behind you with everything you do. I truly believe God put Nick and I in your life for a reason. You had to go through all your struggles. Nick had to go through his to set the stage for what you're going to do next. And this is my entire life now, is working with addicts. I run opiate recovery groups where I have the parents come with the addicts. I work for a Banyan Treatment Center out of Florida. I run the Midwest. I go down there every 3 to 4 weeks. I have over 35 people in treatment there. I meet with them. We keep them in long-term recovery. I put on heroin forums. I'm doing everything. I'm trying to do, you know, my little tagline is helping one addict at a time. I'm a man in recovery helping one addict at a time. I don't want anyone to go through the struggles I had to go through. You don't have to go to prison and lose everything to get sober. There's a little thing called a big book, a sponsor, some 12 steps, and you can have a wonderful life.
Well, it's really amazing what you've gone through, and just how your ex-wife has been able to just relinquish all of that hate and loathing against you, because she did initially blame you for your son's overdose, because you were doing drugs with him, right?
Absolutely. You know, it haunts me to this day, because I was the father that let Nick and his buddies drink beer in the basement, smoke pot, until my neighbor had said, Tim, you know, 30 kids went in your window well last night. I went down there, they're smoking pot, they're tripping on acid, and, you know, I shut it down, and Nick had his struggles. But about 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago, I was dope sick in the bathtub, and my kids knew I did heroin, but they never saw me. You know, I still worked. I had an office in the Wrigley building. I owned an executive search firm. But I was dope sick in the bathroom, and Nick walked in and said, hey, Pops, what's wrong? And I said, what do you think? I'm dope sick. And he said, not anymore, and he left 2 bags of heroin on the counter. Me being an addict, I got out of the tub, did those 2 bags, and I went in his room. I said, Nick, what are you doing? You know, you can't. Oh, don't worry, Dad, I'm just selling a little. I said, Nick, you know what this drug has done to me. It's destroyed my world. And he looked at me and said, well, Dad, you're a successful drug addict. And I said, why would you say that? And he said, well, you've got a good job, you make money, you know. So he had a skewed misconception of it. 3 months later, Nick and I were ultimately doing heroin together. It went down very, very quickly. I caught my case when I overdosed. I ended up going to prison, and he was still struggling. But about a year ago, Nick was in treatment for the 6th time. We met at the time. I was 14, 15 months sober. I said, look, Nick, there's so much we can do together. A father and son team that we're both in recovery. And yeah, Dad, that's great. 30 days out of treatment, he is back in jail again. So, you know.
This is unfortunately, this is such a common story. And I think just by you sharing your story, I think it takes a lot of the shame away from families who have experienced similar things. The guilt of possibly, you know, like, oh, I might have got my kid into this, or I shouldn't have done what I did with them, or I was a bad influence. And I think a lot of parents, especially like with your situation, you know, he ended up overdosing. I think it's so helpful for you to be able to be so honest and just kind of open up the avenue of conversation, so parents can just you know, most of them realize that that wasn't the right choices, but in such a abnormal situation, I mean, it becomes normal, and these choices become logical. And once you're removed from those situations, then you realize, oh, I shouldn't have done that. But you can't change the past, and you've really proven that in a big way. Although you've lost your son and you've lost so much in your life, that's not where your story ends. So tell us what you are doing now, which is probably the most impressive thing I've heard at least this year.
You know, where I'm at now, I'm truly a person on a mission, and I have different areas. I set up a foundation, and I set it up prior to, a lot of people lose a child and we better set up a foundation, which is wonderful to break the stigma. I was setting mine up prior because I had people calling me needing help, and since I'm talking to you right now, I've had 4 phone calls. I'm looking at my cell phone, people reaching out for help. So I work with people that have no insurance, state insurance, or good insurance. I'm the connector. I also work with families. I have a mother whose son just caught 2 attempted murder charges under the influence. I'll connect them with the right lawyers. But with my foundation, I'll help pay to put people into treatment, help pay to get them in a sober home. God forbid a family loses a loved one, we can go give them a check, stock their house full of groceries. I want to build, and we're in the works now, a self-sustaining farm that's an 18-month program for these, I call them kids, 18 to 35-year-olds. They can go live, they can learn job skills, get instilled in recovery, spirituality, so 18 months out, they can have a grasp and be able to get a job and be a productive member of society. Outside of that, I started an opiate recovery group to sideskate the 12 traditions. I advertise it, I promote it, but what I do different is I have the parents or loved ones come with the addicts. On every Thursday night, I'll have anywhere between 40 to 60, maybe 70 people there. I'll share. There's constantly new people coming in. I'll break it off, have a counselor work with the parents. I work with the addicts on how to truly live a life of recovery, that you can have fun in recovery and you can have a wonderful life. Outside of that, I work on Midwest Outreach Coordinator for Banyan Treatment Center out of Florida. So I'm transitioning a lot of the younger individuals. 18 to 35 is our median. Opiate, alcoholic, pill poppers. We can usually keep them down there 6 to 12 months. We're looking to open a facility up in the Chicago area. Outside of that, I put on heroin forums with a couple police officers I work with, but we offer tools to the community and the parents. We offer cell phone monitoring software, computer monitoring software, high-end drug test kits that we give away for free. And then if there is an issue, the parents can come to me and I can connect them to the right treatment centers, the right resources. Sometimes parents just need someone to talk to. Those are a majority of the things. I'm working with congressmen, I'm working with state senators on changing laws and trying to drop the stigma of this epidemic, but let people know this truly is a disease. Nobody wakes up and says, I want to be a drug addict or I want to be an alcoholic or whatever, but there's too many people dying. This whole generation is dying from heroin, and I'm a man on a mission to do what I can to be part of the solution today, and unfortunately, my God had me walk through 28 years of hell to gain all the knowledge to be where I'm at right now.
Well, you're really a living testament to what determination can achieve. I know you get a lot of calls from family members and parents. It really is. It's like the silent war. I just don't see how people can still be in the shadows and hiding behind the shame. It's just as lethal as being on heroin, because if people aren't able to reach out and to admit there's a problem, they're not going to be able to find the resources.
Exactly, and admitting there's a problem first and foremost so we can find the solution. Right now I'm working with the federal judge and his child. I'm working with the chief of police and his child, a prosecutor in Cook County, a public defender, nurses, doctors, their children. These people are all struggling with opiate addiction. It's everywhere, but people still don't want to talk about it. They don't want to address it. Now, I'll use a girl, Ingrid, as the best instance. 4 months ago, she's at my family group on Thursday night, and she's crying. And I said, Ingrid, what's wrong? And she pointed at the parents and said, I wish my mom and dad were there. And I said, why aren't they here? She said, they don't want anyone knowing their daughter's a heroin addict, not in this town. So I called her mom and dad, said, recommended highly that they show up at the next meeting. They did. Long story short, I was just with her parents last weekend down in Florida. Their daughter's been in treatment 3.5 months, has a job, is doing IOP, and is just doing phenomenal. So a lot of people don't know where to turn to. They don't know how to find the right help, because unfortunately in this industry, there's a lot of shady individuals. So I try to guide them and direct them into the right avenues and the right help.
And a lot of the problems too are people's medical insurance aren't covering treatment, so they really have no place to turn. Or if they're on public assistance, most of the for-profit treatment centers, which that's what's available pretty much, they don't take that kind of insurance. So there's millions of people that would go to treatment if they knew how to get in.
You're absolutely right. I was just talking with a young lady on the phone today, and I have a phenomenal treatment center in Chicago that will take Illinois residents for free. So I'm meeting with them tomorrow, and they like to charge a $1,000 fee. My foundation will pay that fee to get those kids in. This girl's going in Thursday. She called 3 hours ago. But then the people with the state insurance, the budgets are getting cut. It's a 12 to 16 week wait for a bed. These people are dying. And then people with, the good insurance, a lot of them still don't know what is the right answer for treatment. And with opiate addicts, putting them in treatment for 3 weeks and sending them home is not the answer. They need to change every aspect. If we can get them out of state into long-term care, 6 to 12 months, they're going to have a better chance of turning their lives around. But it's also, once they get out, how to truly live a life of recovery. Well, I go to meetings. Well, are you working the steps? Do you have a sponsor? Do you have a spiritual relationship? I'm a 12-step thumper to the core because I tried everything else and nothing else worked for me. I love the analogy that, religion's for people that are afraid of hell and spirituality's for people that have walked through hell. I don't knock religion, but I'll go back to a little treatment center by the name of Hazelton. Started in 1947, and do you know why Hazelton was started? For alcoholic priests. So if all these alcoholic priests couldn't get sober in the church, they had to get sober in a treatment center. That's why Hazleton was started. So, you know, that's the way I live. I don't knock anyone else's recovery. But if I can turn my life around and have a, 2 years, 5 months, and 8 days sober, anybody can.
Well, that's definitely inspirational. Now, what if people that come to you and they're not familiar with the 12-step modality, or they're just not interested in it? Can you still help them?
Absolutely. I'll help anyone, anywhere, anytime. My phone literally rings 24 hours a day. The only time I don't answer it is when I'm in a 12-step meeting. But I have people that want Christian-based programs. I know which ones to guide and direct them to. For teens, for adolescents, for professionals, non-professionals. I live the 12 steps, but even at my opiate group, I tell people, look, do church, do celebrate recovery, see a therapist, pray to Buddha, sing Kumbaya. I don't care what you do, but you got to change every aspect of your life, and a lot of people aren't willing to do that. Or you get these kids with the opiates that are on maintenance drugs, Suboxone, methadone, but they still want to utilize alcohol or weed. And you know what? Until someone's had enough pain, they're not going to change their core beliefs and want to listen. And it took me a long time. It took me 28 years in and out of recovery to finally change. And that was the prison doors slamming behind me.
And that's a really important point for parents. I think there's a really huge disconnect between the families of their loved ones that have an addiction issue, and how to help, how to navigate through finding treatment centers. I mean, the whole thing is really confusing. And then they feel they just don't know how to help.
Well, one of the big problems I see today, and we're going to be changing that when we open our IOP program up here in Naperville area initially, is parents will send their kids to treatment, but they don't get any help. And a lot of parents have been affected, or they're enablers, or they give in. The whole family needs to get help along with the addict. And I'm not seeing that happen. You put someone in treatment, send parents down for a 24-hour, 48-hour family week. The parents or loved ones or husband or wife need therapy and counseling just as much as the addicts do.
And it's really important because there's been quite a bit of success when the families are actively engaged, and they need to learn tools just alongside with their loved one, because I think most families, of course, even if they're not perfect, I mean, what family is?
No one.
They really are interested in learning how to complement the new lives and the new skills and just the new perspective of someone who's newly sober. And it takes time. I always tell people that if you're going to a treatment center, that's really the first step, and not in an AA way, but I just mean, like, you are just beginning your journey of sobriety, and there's so many things you have to learn. So for a lot of families, that comes as kind of a surprise, like, oh, I thought I could send them to treatment, and poof, they would be fixed. But that's not necessarily the case, and that's why it's so important to integrate with the family. That's why there's a really heavy, strong trend lately about getting families involved with their recovery. And also they need support as well, because it's just as exhausting and challenging dealing with a loved one who is an addict, who's ripping you off or burning your house down or whatever they're doing. There's a lot of healing that needs to be done.
There absolutely is. And, you know, a lot of parents' misconception, as you talked about, their child goes to treatment. As I explain it to mom and dad, I say, look, say they're a heroin addict. The first week, they're just going to get detoxed. The second week, they're going to start eating and feeling better. The third week, they're going to start grasping. The fourth week, they're sent out of the door. Whether they've been using drugs 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, that's not going to be fixed in 3 to 4 weeks. This is a lifelong journey and a process, and that's why I work with these people. You know, that's why I go down to the treatment center every 3 to 4 weeks is to meet with the kids I have down there. I was in Fort Lauderdale yesterday, and 8 of us went to the beach, and they're working, and I'm making sure they have a sponsor, and what step are they on, and progressing along. But it's even helping the parents because they just don't know what to do. And unfortunately, there's a lot of doctors and therapists that don't understand recovery and what recovery is all about. So that's what I really try to do is my actions speak louder than words, and people don't realize with everything I have going on, my recovery comes first. I do a 12-step meeting every day for myself, because without that, I don't have anything.
Yeah, I heard something great, and I don't know who said it, but it says the first thing you put above your recovery is guaranteed to be the second thing you will lose, and it's so true.
Absolutely, I agree with you 1,000%. And one thing I wanted to go back on, you had mentioned my former wife, Shannon. When Nick passed away, there was a ton of resentment and anger, and even in that interview, she said, I wish I was laying there. And I was sitting in the other room when that interview went on, and she's absolutely right. But I am truly blessed because of this program. Shannon's a dear friend of mine. We have 3 other wonderful children together. One lives with me, 2 live with her because they wanted to, go to their schools that they were in. And we still do things together as a family. She was just down in Florida with my parents and 2 of our children. And, we had to move on and try to be the best parents we can be for our 3 remaining children. We can't dwell on the negativity, but even after Nick's passing, a lot of arrows were shot at me, and everyone wanted to blame me. And what they didn't realize is, when I was in, some of her family members, I even said, when I was in active addiction or when I was in prison, what did you do to help Nick? Well, he wouldn't talk to us. Well, you didn't do anything. But now that he's dead and he died on my 21-month sobriety date, you want to blame me. And unfortunately, I'm trying to open people's eyes so they're not standing at their child's casket going, I wish I would have listened to you, Tim.
I see addiction not only divides the parents from the children, but it really starts to divide the parents between themselves. And I think that's one of the most unfortunate aspects of trying to help your child, because if the parents aren't able to co-parent and cooperate and work in a united way, then the kids are still split between all of their problems and the parents.
Absolutely, and what I try to really instill with a lot of parents is you got to stop enabling. When Nick was still alive, his grandmother let him stay there a lot, and I said, you got to kick him out. Well, I don't want him to die on the streets, and I said, no, he died in $1 million home, but he could go out and use, come there, spend a few days, eat, take a shower, leave, go back up. If I'm a drug addict, I wouldn't change. What a great way to live. So it's tough, and even I have a lot of parents that say, I found these bags of heroin, or I found these pills, what should I do? Call and have your son or daughter arrested. Well, I don't want them to go to jail. Guess what? Prison saved my life, and sometimes that's the eye-opener after they've been to treatment 3 or 4 times or whatever. Jail's a humbling place, and maybe that's the flip switch to say, what, I've had enough pain. Maybe I will listen to Tim. Maybe I will try this recovery thing. And I suggest to people, give me 90 days. Give me 90 days to work with you, and if your life doesn't get better, you can go have all your misery back.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, of course, parents don't want their kids to go to jail, but these are not decisions you're making when you're pregnant with your firstborn, and all of the things you expect from them, college, and trying to get in a good college. These are choices where you're trying to keep your kid alive long enough where they can realize that they can get help. Right.
It's and it's unfortunate. Last night I had I had posted something on Facebook on Narcan, naloxone. It reverses the effects of an opiate overdose. It's legal in Illinois. I carry it. I train families. And one of the local police stations had a save. And I posted it in my Man in Recovery group on Facebook. A kid called me last night, Matt, at 8 o'clock, and he said, Tim, you saw that post? I said, yeah. He said, that was me. I said, Matt, what are you talking about? You just got out of treatment a week ago. He said, well, I thought I could use one more time. That one time he used, he overdosed. Thank God they found him, and he's back in treatment again. But, you know, as you know, it's cunning, baffling, and powerful. That's why I do what I do. I see death almost on a daily basis. I see the heartache, but I see the hope. My motto is I take people from dope to hope. And when I can hear a parent 3 or 4 months later, thank you. And the kids, you know, I had a couple of these kids saying, oh, you saved my life. I said, I didn't save anyone's life. I just gave you the tools to apply and prodded you this way, and you did it all with, you know, your God's grace. You know, I can't save anyone. All I can do is carry the message, offer the tools, offer suggestions, and what they do is up to them.
And that's one of the scariest places for a parent to be, because they can't live their children's lives and they can't prevent them from doing whatever they're going to do. So in AA lingo, it's you can't change people, places, or things, and it's really heartbreaking when parents are trying to do everything they can and their kids are still going to use. They're the ones who have to stop, or at least want to stop.
You know, and I agree, and unfortunately what I see too is a lot of parents with a 20, a 22, a 25-year-old child that might be a year or two sober, but the parents are trying to live the life for the child, and, well, we're doing this and we're doing that, and it's like, hold on, you've got to let them go. And, well, what if they use? Well, if they're going to use, they're going to use. When I wanted to use, there was nothing stopping me. But you can't protect your kids forever. You got to let them go out and start applying these tools to their life so they can build up their self-esteem and their self-worth. Mm-hmm. But I see a lot of parents trying to control every aspect, and it just, I'm an addict. You tell me this, I'm going that way.
Unfortunately, I mean, I'm laughing because I've seen it so many times, and it's really true. This is why it's hard to put that distance between you and your child if they're struggling, because it's just like a maternal instinct to want to be there and to help your child and prevent them from doing harm or being in harmful situations. But this is a whole different world. I mean, if they're addicts, if they're addicted to something, there's really nothing a parent can do except for just come back a little bit, you know, to have some distance there.
Well, you know, and I explained to a lot of parents, as I did with our son Nick. Nick, when he got out of treatment a year or so ago, 30 days out of treatment, he was back in jail, Cook County Jail in Chicago, for selling bogus pills, trying to buy heroin. He did 30 days in there and then did 2 weeks in another county jail and got out. And Shannon met him and said, Nick, I'll buy you a meal. You're not going to your dad's. You're not coming to my house. You're not going to grandma's. Because he's either going to steal, rob, whatever. No, I'm doing the right things. I talked to him 5 days out of jail and said, Nick, come get some naloxone. Don't worry, Dad, I'm not on that. 2 days later, he was dead. But he ultimately made his own choices. But as parents, we had to walk away. You know, we didn't cause it, didn't cure it, can't cure it. Can't control it, but we can contribute to it. And, you know, sometimes you got to let them go. And as I explained to a lot of parents, most addicts that are daily users, if you kick them to the curb, those aren't the ones dying. They're getting enough dope or drugs just to get by. The ones that are usually dying are the ones coming, first-time users, coming out of treatment, coming out of jail, in sober homes, or mixing alcohol and benzos with other drugs. But I'll even take it a step deeper. 3 months ago, on a Tuesday nights, I run my opiates recovery group, and a kid walked in. And about 20 minutes in, I stopped and looked at him. I said, I know you. Where do I know you from? He said, I knew your son, Nick. And I said, did you used to hang out at our house and party? He said, no. And then it hit me. Nick, dead, hospital, the kid that brought him. I said, my son died with you. He said, your son died at my house. And I said, well, it took a lot to walk into my meeting. You don't know me that well. And he said, I need your help. And I said, I need the truth. And unfortunately, this happens a lot too. My son and his girlfriend went to this kid's house. They were all doing heroin, just snorting it. They ate some Xanax. They knew my son was overdosing. They were afraid to call 911. They panicked. They propped him up on the sofa, said he was breathing, went in the basement and did more drugs and came up and he was dead. Then they drove around with him in the car for 2 hours, afraid to go to the hospital. So then I asked this kid, well, what are you doing with your life now? And he said, well, after next week, I went to treatment and I'm in a sober home. I'm 4 months sober. I said, how can I help you? And he said, would you be my sponsor? And I said, yeah. So out of that twofold, that's how I live my life today. But we need more Good Samaritan laws to where, unfortunately, a lot of kids or people die because they're afraid to pick up the phone and call 911 and ask for help. So those are other things I'm working on and trying to looking to get some billboards up on the highways here in Chicago and let people know you won't get arrested if you call 911 and have drugs in the house.
Yeah, I think that's going to save so many lives, and that's a genuine concern for these kids. And you would think no, they would just call 911, but they don't want to get in trouble. And no one who's doing these drugs ever think it's going to get to that point where someone's going to overdose and they're really going to be faced with these life and death decisions.
Right, and they don't know what to do, or they're all under the influence and they panic, or someone goes in the bathroom and they're all high and they're shooting up or snorting some lines and they overdose and don't even know what happened. But yeah, things got to change drastically. Our whole system is broken and it's just getting worse. So I'm a man on a mission trying to do my part.
And I'm so glad you are, and I'm sure thousands of others around the country are too. So how can we support you? What can we do, whether it's money or time or effort or energy? How can people help you and get in touch with you?
You know, well, I give my phone number out anywhere. Anyone can reach me on my phone, 312-502-8671. I can be reached by email at amaninrecovery@gmail.com or theprofessionaladdict@gmail, or at my website, amaninrecovery.org. And I'm looking to take this nationwide. I need people willing to volunteer. Donations always help, but so many people can help in so many different ways, and it's amazing the parents that reach out. And we need to form an army here. You know, I speak all over the country. I'll talk to schools. I talk to colleges. I'll talk to police stations. You know, we had Senator or Congressman Randy Hulkin was supposed to show up at one of our heroin forums, and he couldn't make it, but he flew in his chief of staff from Washington, D.C., and she said, you know, we were really impressed. Well, I went by to thank her the next day, and we spent 2.5 hours together, and now we've got the, you know, the chief, one of the congressman's chief of staff working on getting some laws put in place. So I'm a guy that'll bother people until they pick up the phone and listen to me, but I need more people. I need more feet on the ground, and we need more people willing to drop the mask. One of the things that haunts me, the local county jail in DuPage County, it approached me, a non-for-profit, and said, Tim, will you come in and speak to the people in the jail? I said, I'd love to, but you won't let me. Well, why? I said, because I've got some felonies from my DUIs and driving on revoked license. Well, can you find us a heroin addict to come in and speak in the jails? And I said, well, to find a heroin addict clean and sober, 1 in 10,000. To find one that's willing to come in the jails and speak, 1 in 100,000. I said, find one clean and sober, willing to come in the jails without a felony, good luck. I'm still looking for that person. But it's interesting, Friday night, I'm going to speak to all the volunteers at Sheridan Correctional Center, the prison I was in. The warden reached out to me, and I'm blessed to be doing that. And hopefully in the next 3 to 6 months, I'll be going back into the prison and speaking to the inmates that were in my situation 2.5 years ago, and just offering hope to people.
Well, you are doing an incredible job, and I really, truly couldn't be more impressed with you, and I feel so honored that our paths crossed, and I look forward to staying connected. So I will have all of your information available on under the comments of the show, and we'll definitely stay in touch.
And I appreciate everything you're doing, and thank you for reaching out to me. And next time in your state of California, I will come visit you.
I hope so. Yeah, we'll have to line up. I'm sure a lot of people will be interested in hearing what you have to say when you do visit.
Let's do it. You have a wonderful day, okay, my friend?
Thank you so much. That's Tim Ryan, a maninrecovery.org. Reach out to him, and hey, let's get that army going. Thanks, Tim.
Have a blessed day, my friend.